Alright, I'm going to walk through how to make a Photoshop file with a scale image of your rectangular photographic piece showing a matte and also a frame dimension. So first thing you should do is have a handy-dandy copy of your file. Don't accidentally do this to your only edited file. That would make you sad. So here I have a designated, saved, flattened JPEG. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and open it up in Photoshop. Boom, there it is. And what I want to do first is make sure that I have an image that is only the picture, right? The thing that I know the dimension of. So I'm going to go ahead and I will crop this down because it looks a little skewed. I'm going to go ahead and do a perspective crop and then scale that. That looks about right. Boom. Up, missed a little bit at the bottom. I'm just going to go ahead and trim that off with regular crop. Hold down the control key to avoid that snap. Alright, cool. So now I have the image file sort of with the correct amount of image that is my actual print. And I'm going to set the size of it. So the key here is that we're working at literal, actual, physical dimensions of the real object and a very low resolution, right? So I know this is an 8" by 10" tintype, so I'm going to go ahead and I went to image size and I'm going to set it to inches. I'm going to say width 8 inches. Right now, you'll notice it's not exactly giving me the right proportion. Why? I don't know. Maybe I trimmed it a little wrong, who knows what. But I've measured it and I know that it's actually literally 8" by 10". So I'm going to do something we don't normally do. I'm going to uncheck this little box, right? It's super stupid as a user interface. The link stays there, but the lines disappear instead of showing a broken chain, which is the standard way that we indicate these things across space and time. But anyway, uncheck it, right? And now I can literally put 8" by 10", right? So it's going to distort it a little bit, not very much, just a little bit, to get me to that correct proportion. And then I'm going to set the resolution to be something small. What resolution do you use? Well, if you have a destination place that it's going, like if your one sheet is sized to a particular resolution at a particular scale, that would be helpful. I'm going to go ahead and just set it to 10 pixels per inch. So it's going to be pretty teeny tiny, right? 8" by 10". 10 pixels per inch. Gosh, that seems really tiny. Let's go to 100 pixels per inch. What does that look like? Well, that looks a little bit better. The key is, right, whatever you're doing that is to scale, if you can make it the real size, right, whatever that real size is, you can make the real size at a resolution, right? If you have another document that is also at the real size at the same resolution, if you drop this in, it will look appropriate, right? They will both be the right scale. So with that in mind, you know what? 8" by 10". I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to drop it down 100 pixels per inch. You know, like if I make a 10-foot high wall, that's still a lot of pixels. I'm going to go ahead and I will drop it down to 50 pixels per inch. Wow, look at that, so small. Okay, so now I have my image, and if I was just going to pin it up on the wall, it's now ready to go, right? It's at scale. But I would like to have a lovely little traditional mat around it, right? White mat, and then I'm going to have a black frame. So I know, using the power of my brains, that the mat I want is going to be a 1.5 inch mat all the way around, right? So 1.5 inch mat all the way around. That sounds good. What I want to do then, it's going to be a white mat, right? So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to do something again that is a little bit unusual for our normal Photoshop workflows, but it will make my life a little bit easier. I'm going to go ahead and flatten my image, right? So I go down here to my layer menu, click on the hamburger menu, flatten image, boop, right? That means that I can now go into canvas size, right? So here's my canvas size, and right now it's the same as my image size, 8 inches by 10 inches. I know that I want a 1.5 inch border all the way around. So I can do that one of two ways, right? 1.5 inch, 1.5 inch, right? That's 3 inches total. I can go ahead and just add 3 inches to 8, 9, 10, 11, 3 inches to 10, 11, 12, 13. I could enter those two numbers in here, right? Canvas extension color white. Hit return, that would be good to go. Or I can put in here relative, right? By checking that, I'm saying how much do I want to increase or decrease, but we're just increasing. How much do I want to increase the canvas size by? So I'm not entering the total, I'm entering just the amount that it's changing. So I already said 3, so 3 inches, right? Making sure it's on inches. Come down here to canvas extension color, right? Because it's a flattened image, we get that. If you don't see it, check and make sure that it is a flattened image. You can do it with sort of transparency, right? And you just have to fill that with white paint afterwards, but that seems like a pain. Okay, so 3 inches by 3 inches, beautiful. Anchored in the middle, right? I want that 3 inches to be the same all the way around, and I want it to be white. If you have a mat that's a different color, you can go there and choose it. You can also set that in your foreground color or background color and do that there. I just want white. Okay, boom, there we go. So there is my 8 inch by 10 inch image with 3 inches of mat all the way around it. Now, I don't just want to have an image and a mat, I also want to have a frame. My frame is going to be black because, again, I'm very traditional. And I would like to have that frame, the face of the frame, right, so that edge that you see on the front, I'd like for that to be 3/4 of an inch, right? What should you choose? Well, you should choose whatever your frame is, right? That's the whole point. This should be actually what you are going to do. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to have a 3/4 of an inch frame. So I go back to canvas size again, right? I'm still relative. Now, some fancier math, 3/4 of an inch, right? All the way around. So 3/4 plus 3/4 is 1.5. Good job. And I want it to be black. Again, you can choose whatever color you want. You want a brown frame because it's wood grain, like knock yourself out. So there we go. I have black, I have relative, and 1.5 inches to accommodate 3/4 on either side. Boop. There you go. That is what my piece will look like with that size mat, with that sized frame. If I was getting tricky now, and I wanted to say, all right, well, what'll it look like on the wall? Right, make a new layer. So it's now no longer flattened. I'm going to go back to canvas size, and instead of relative, right, I'm going to say my canvas size is going to be my wall. Right, so how high is your wall? I don't know. Let's say it is 8'6", right? So what's 8'6" in inches? Oh, man, that's going to be hard. So there's 12 inches in a foot. So 8 times 11 is 88, plus another 8, that's 96. So 96 inches is giving me 8 feet. So if I wanted, let's say 8'6", So that would be 96 plus another 8, so that is 104. All right, so my height is 104, and my width, I don't remember what we said, but let's say it is 42 inches. Now it's going to expand out from all directions, so our image is going to end up in the center, which is not really where it goes, but that's why I made it a new layer, right? So we'll be able to move this around without any trouble. You'll also notice that there is not the option for a color, right? My canvas extension color down there is grayed out. Again, because it has layers, it's going to expand out and give us transparency, and then we can fill in whatever color we would like. Alright, so zoom out. There we go. There is our image floating there in the middle of our wall, which is, let's check, image size 104 inches high. And let's just check my math, right? Open up that calculator app. 104, right, divided by 12, 8.66667, right? Okay, so 8.66667, that doesn't really sound right. That sounds like I did that wrong. So let's do the math again. All right, so 12 inches in a foot, and I said what, 8.5 feet. If I knew how to do that, 12 inches in a foot times 8.5 feet, 102. You know, this is why I'm a photographer and not a mathematician. Okay, so I want my canvas size to be 102 inches, not 104 inches, if I'm going to get that actual 8 feet. But never fear. I'm going to go right back to my canvas size and simply say 102. Right? I'm doing canvas size, not image size. I'm not scaling anything. I'm just chopping off those extra 2 inches so that it is actually 8'6". Boop. There we go. Cool. So now I have my exciting wall in there. I would like to have my wall be a solid color. I'm going to not make group. That's the wrong thing to do. I'm going to make a solid color. And we'll make it white. I'm going to put it below, obviously, my image. That looks great. And I can now position this wherever I want. One thing that you may be wondering is, well, how do I get it at the right height? Right? So measuring it, right, I could go over here to this scale over here and figure that out. That seems, frankly, like a little bit of a pain. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go down here to the rectangle tool. So that's U on the keyboard, or it's right over here. Boop, grab that rectangle tool. Now, what I want to do is I want to make a rectangle that has a particular size. So I come up here to the contextual menu, come across to that gear, click on it, and I say fixed size. And now I'm going to draw a rectangle that goes to whatever the midpoint of my hanging piece is. If there's another way that you want to determine the height, right, you can have a rectangle that goes to whatever that is, right, if you want the bottom of the piece, top of the piece. Typically, we are hanging to a midpoint. What should that measurement be? You know, I don't know. I'm sure that there is an answer on the internet. In fact, I'm going to take a half a second right now and pause this and find it from the internet. So hold on. So the internet says 57 to 60 inches. Okay, sure, why not? So I'm going to go ahead here. I've got my rectangle tool right there. I came up here, clicked on the gear, and I'm going to say 57 inches high. Cool. And now when I click over here, you'll see I snap up a rectangle that is that height. Now, a couple of things wrong with what I just did, right? So I drew a white pixel rectangle into the layer that had my image in it. That's not helpful. Covered up part of it. So that was dumb. So let's go down here instead We can make a new layer, drop it in here between the layer that is my artwork and the layer that is my wall color. So here's my reference rectangle. I'm also going to make it a new color. This is also a handy way to be able to draw a pedestal, right? So if you know your pedestal wants to be this high by this wide, you can make a, say, light gray rectangle that are those dimensions, or that is those dimensions, and that will be great. Alright, so let's try this again. Drop it in there. There, that looks a lot better. Now I'm going to come back here to my artwork, auto select layer, perfect. And we can align my center point on there. Right, so if you want an easier way to do that, I can just drag a guide down, snaps to the top of that, right, and then it will snap onto the midpoint of that. And that's good. Now I can turn this bad boy off and just use my arrow keys to nudge that photograph over. So this is a handy way to figure out what something looks like at scale on whatever your wall space is. Obviously, it is maybe more useful when you have multiple pieces, right? So doing that, right, all you want to do, open up each of those pieces separately, do the scale it down to the actual print dimensions, make sure it's at that same low resolution that your other file is, so that when you copy and paste between them it'll match. Make it that small size, make it that real life size at the low resolution. Again, expand out, right, get the matte, again, expand out, get the frame. Once you've got that, flatten that together, select all, copy, drop it into your image that has your piece and the wall, right? And as long as they are both at the same resolution and at life size, they will drop in correctly scaled relative to one another. Now, the last thing you might want to do is to drop in a scale figure. So a scale figure is a representation of a person that gives you a better sense of how big everything is, right? Because right now we just have a floaty white wall and a piece on it, right? Like maybe this wall is 25 feet tall, maybe this wall is not. It's really, we need something that we can relate to immediately and understand its scale. So to do that, you just need to grab a figure, right? Ideally a human figure. I instead have Spider-Man. And what I'm going to do is go in here and grab Spider-Man, copy, come back to my drawing, and again I need a way to figure out how tall I should make him. I am once again going to go to my rectangle tool, set a fixed size of 5'6" because that is the proper height for all well-meaning and good people. So 5'6", 5 foot is 60 inches, so that's 66 inches high. Right, making sure that I'm here on that layer with a rectangle in it. Cool. So I can now paste in Spider-Man, right? So I can see that I need to scale him up because he is a wee tiny Spider-Man. So I'm just going to scale him until the top of his Spidey head aligns with that 5'6" marker. Is that about right? Zoom in there. Yeah. So the top of the pixels is a little bit higher, but if I zoom in, the top of his head, right, is right about 5'6". So I'm going to turn off the rectangles, turn back on Spider-Man. I'm going to drag Spider-Man to the top of my layer stack, I'm going to call him Brad outside of class. Oh no, I've given away my secret identity. And now we have something where we can perhaps a little bit better relate to how big that wall is and how big our piece is, as well as sort of where it is vis-a-vis eye level, right? So we can start to understand, if I had a grid of pieces, right, what would that mean, and where would they need to be, right? All that good stuff. All right, so hopefully you have gained something here from understanding how to make a scale representation of your work with a mat, with a frame. If you have work that is displaying itself in a different way, remember, all you need to do is get it to be the right literal dimensions at that low resolution, right? So if it is irregular, if you can figure out what, if you drew a rectangle around the real piece, what that rectangle would be, you can scale your image of that irregular piece to match those rectangular dimensions, right? Set it to that same low resolution, pop it in your wall that is also at that resolution, and it is now in a proper scaled relationship. You can drop Spider-Man in, you can drop a chair in, you can drop a pedestal in, any of that stuff, and get a sense of what they will actually look like. Enjoy!